On today's episode, I'll be talking about a set at Christmas classic, the original Lethal Weapon.
If you're looking for a man with no plans or programs, and he always needs a chance to hold hands for romance, or you're looking for the loot with an old man or cold hands, it's a creature of the night who heads for his spotlight. I'm here to welcome you to Landed and Random Reviews. No method when I choose. It's Brandon and Random Reviews.
All right, everyone, welcome to Brandon at Random Reviews, covering one unsystematically chosen topic at a time. If you like listening to a guy recap and review movies in weekly episodes, then look no further. To keep up with the newest content, you can find Brandon at Random Reviews on most major video and audio platforms, as well as all popular social media sites. If you enjoy this, please like and subscribe. I use listener engagement as a method to torture people to get information out of them for my criminal overlords. As I mentioned, today's movie is Lethal Weapon, released on March 6th, 1987, with a runtime of 109 minutes. This movie is rated R by the Motion Picture Association of America, budget $15 million, directed by Richard Donner, who is one of my all-time favorite directors, to be clear. He directed the original Superman. I love the original Superman. It's so well done. And unfortunately, he was supposed to direct Superman 2, but they actually fired him midway through it. Richard Donner was like a big budget kind of guy, and they didn't really like the amount of money he was spending. It wasn't that he wasn't doing a good job. He also directed Maverick, and that was based on an old TV show starring James Garner. I've never actually seen the TV show, but I really enjoy the movie. He directed The Goonies, which I didn't see until high school, so I didn't have the appreciation for it that I should have. I just didn't really realize it was a movie that existed. And so I saw it at a friend's house when I was in like 9th grade or something, but it was still pretty amusing, and I do have a pretty good appreciation for it still, even though it's more geared towards children. For the writers, we have Shane Black and Jeffrey Boehm. They wrote The Last Boy Scout, which stars Bruce Willis and Damon Wayans. I enjoy that movie, but it's not like super great. It's pretty good, but by the standards of this era, it doesn't get talked about as being that great for good reason. They wrote Last Action Hero, not The Last Action Hero. I apologize. That stars Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's a very meta movie, and because it's so meta and referential to Arnold Schwarzenegger or a guy that's like Arnold Schwarzenegger, it doesn't really resonate as much as a great action movie. It's more of a comedy. And they also wrote my favorite of these three selections, The Nice Guys, with Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe. Really enjoy that movie. It's really funny. Ryan Gosling really showed his comedy chops in it. I really had a good time with that movie, and I need to go back and probably cover it for this podcast. For the composer, we have Michael Kamen, who also did Die Hard. There's a lot of similarity between these two scores, especially with Die Hard. He did Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze, which is a little over the top and ridiculous, but it's still a good movie to me. And he did Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with Kevin Costner, and I don't really care for that movie in particular, but I just think it's not that great. It's not very well done. I get what they were going for, but it's a little much. Eric Clapton does he does the guitar scoring for this movie. He was like a special guest composer. For the cast, we have Mel Gibson, who plays Martin Riggs, and I will be referring to him as Riggs throughout this episode. Martin is just not something he gets called. Like, he is, of the two main lead characters, he is the one that I forget his first name the most. He was in Mad Max the first one, and that one was pretty solid. It was not like a great action movie by today's standards or even by like late 80s and 90s standards where they were really upping the ante with action movies. It's just okay. I don't know that I ever need to rewatch it. But he was in The Road Warrior, which has since been rebranded as Mad Max 2 The Road Warrior so that people know it's part of the Mad Max series. And I enjoy that movie quite a bit. It's very good. I'll probably eventually cover it on this podcast. It's easily the best of the three that Mel Gibson was in, to me at least, and I think a lot of people would probably agree with that. And he was in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. That movie was pretty solid actually, but it was just, I don't know, it wasn't as good as the second one. It was probably better than the first one. I don't know if that's a hot take or something. And he was in Braveheart, which won Best Picture, and although it's deeply historically inaccurate, it's still a really good movie. And he was in Ransom, which I need to go back. I don't know that I ever actually watched Ransom from beginning to end, but it does have a really intense and interesting premise, and so I really do want to go back and rewatch it. Then we have Danny Glover, who plays Roger Murtaugh, and I will be referring to him as Roger for the duration of this recap. He was in The Color Purple, which I haven't actually gotten around to seeing. I have been meaning to watch it. It's just, there are so many fucking movies that I want to watch that it's just not that high up there on my list of priorities. I've never really heard people, it's not that it's not supposed to be a good movie, it's just people don't talk about it. That's my big thing with movies is it's like if people are talking about how great a movie is, I want to watch it. I barely hear people mention The Color Purple. He was in Angels in the Outfield, which I covered on a short form video episode, and that one has Joseph Gordon-Levitt in it as a little kid, and basically that one's pretty solid. It's a family flick. It's nothing amazing. It's just a really, nice family movie. And he was also in the first Saw movie. I believe he was a detective in that movie. And the first Saw is pretty solid, actually. I mean, there's some stuff in it that's it kind of leaves you scratching your head after the fact because it's kind of oh, why didn't they do this? Or why didn't they grab the cell phone with the hacksaw? Or, whatever. And it's just kind of it's still a good movie. It's really well done and I really like it. Then we have Gary Busey, who plays Joshua, or Mr. Joshua, if you will. He was in the Buddy Holly story as Buddy Holly. When I was little, I only knew him from Lethal Weapon, so I didn't know he played Buddy Holly, but that was shocking to me that he was cast as Buddy Holly because I so think of him as this enraged psychopath that it didn't seem like it was a fitting casting choice. But it actually is. I've seen the movie and it's pretty solid. It's not really that great either. He was in Point Break, recently covered on this podcast, actually, the original with Keanu Reeves, and he's pretty good in it. He's a much lighter hearted guy than he is in this movie, but I really enjoy that first Point Break. And he was in Under Siege with Steven Seagal. I can't even remember who he was in that movie because I remember it always surprises me that Tommy Lee Jones is in that movie. I always forget that too, and it's just because Steven Seagal is so god-awful, I don't know anything nice to say about him. Then last but not least on this list, I didn't have many noteworthy actors, but Mitchell Ryan plays the general, and he was in a movie called Grosse Pointe Blank with John Cusack and Minnie Driver, I believe. I haven't seen that in so long that I don't remember what part he plays in that movie, but I seem to remember that being a pretty entertaining movie. He was in Liar Liar. He is, I think, one of the partners or something at the law firm that Jim Carrey's character works at. And he's in it. He's kind of funny in it, but he's not what you remember about that movie. And the thing that I strangely enough remember him from, just because I'm oddly a fan of this film series, is Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, which is the 6th movie in the Halloween franchise. And this was the one where they really got off the rails pretty bad with the story that was going on in Halloween. This movie is most noteworthy in being technically the first big role of Paul Rudd, even though it came out after Clueless, which he really made a name for himself in. This movie was shot first, technically, so that's how I remember Mitchell Ryan, because he's a bad guy in the movie. even with Michael Myers being in the movie, he's still a bad guy. For casting notes, I'm just going to list a whole bunch of actors and you're just going to have to deal with it. Bruce Willis, Christopher Reeve, Michael Biehn, Pierce Brosnan, Stephen Lang, Ron Perlman, Michael Nouri, Sylvester Stallone, Patrick Swayze, Michael Douglas, Jeff Goldblum, Kurt Russell, and Christopher Lambert were all considered in some capacity for the role of Riggs. For the plot synopsis, two newly paired cops who are complete opposites must put aside their differences in order to catch a gang of drug smugglers. For the tagline, if these two guys can learn to stand each other, the bad guys don't stand a chance. That's not a great tagline, by the way. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it is what it is. Alright guys, let's just dive right into the plot of this motherfucking movie. So this movie kicks off with the song Jingle Bell Rock, and that of course makes me assume that only happy things could possibly be happening to start off this movie. I started thinking about that as I was watching this, but this is definitely not the first ironic use of cheerful music to accompany something very serious in a movie. At the very least, Halloween did it with Mr. Sandman in 1978. But anywho, it slowly makes its way toward this apartment building, I guess, and it zooms inside. It shows this attractive blonde woman laying in the bed by herself, and she seems pretty fucking smiley as she's laying there, and then she gets up to do a quick line of nose candy off a table, and all of a sudden it kind of shifts to her being serious and trying to start smiling again. She walks over to the balcony and we get some pretty serious boobage as she looks over the railing. Honestly, she seems pretty distraught now, despite all the smiling that she's doing, and she climbs up on the railing and looks down, and I'm sure she's just trying to get a better view of the land. Nothing to be worried about, of course. She's not going to do anything crazy. It gives us a shot looking upward to show just how far up she is, and it'd be honestly pretty funny if she was only like 2 stories up. Eventually, she makes the jump, and it's very effectively shot as she falls in slow motion and eventually lands on a parked car below. We see what appears to be the shadow of someone who was there and witnessed what she had done. Like, they kind of walk by looking at her laying dead on the roof of the car and walk away, and you don't really know if this person was just a witness outside. You kind of assume they had to have had something to do with it. But from what you could tell, she just kind of did this. It didn't really seem like there was somebody else that would have been involved. Then it cuts to this milk truck driving by a house, and it cuts inside where Roger Murtaugh is being surprised in the bathtub by his family, who is wishing him a happy birthday. Roger is played by Danny Glover, and he's turning 50 years old, and only fans of this franchise can relate to the confusing sight of Roger having a beard in this brief intro scene. But Murtaugh's eldest daughter, Rianne, I called him Murtaugh just now, it's Roger. I'm going to call him Roger. I'm just going to correct right now. But Roger's eldest daughter, Rianne, makes a comment about him going gray, especially in his beard, so you just know that beard isn't going to last long anyway. The scene gives us the first instance of the jarring choice to score much of the moments with Roger in this movie as he knows he's getting old with this bluesy saxophone. It's just a really weird choice, and it honestly persists throughout this whole movie and the whole film series. Like, the whole franchise, you get a little bit of the saxophone here and there, but it's only present in these more downer type moments, mostly with Roger. It cuts to a dog running across a beach, or it could have been a field of some sort. I think it's a beach though. And it goes into a house trailer RV type thing. Inside the trailer is Martin Riggs, as played by Mel Gibson. Riggs has an iconic mullet in these first 3 films of the series. He's completely naked in this scene, and he gets out of bed to grab a beer and go to the bathroom. Riggs doesn't appear to be in the best spirits, but it's not clear if it only seems that way because he's just waking up, and some people don't wake up super cheerful. It cuts back to the Murtaugh household where Roger has gotten dressed, and he's coming downstairs and is talking to his wife, Trish. It's reiterated that Roger is 50 years old now after Trish tells him about some guy he knew who has been trying to get a hold of him that he hasn't heard from in like 12 years. This man is named Michael Hunsaker. Roger claims that he's a Vietnam buddy when Trish mentions that he's never spoken of him before. And as he goes to head out the door for work, he sees his eldest daughter Rianne again, and she mentions that she's wearing her New Year's Eve dress. Roger is clearly very stressed out at the prospect of getting old, and he's also very bothered by the fact that his daughter is now as grown up as she is, especially considering this actress who is playing her, and she plays her in all 4 movies, is like 26 in this movie. Like when they were shooting this, she was 26 years old, because I was like, good God, that girl looks way too fucking old to be some teenager. I just don't buy it, and so I had to look it up. Roger drives to the scene of this crime, which turns out to be the location of the opening scene of the movie, where the woman jumped off the balcony and landed on the car. You remember what I just talked about. It's almost immediately revealed that the woman's name is Amanda Hunsaker, and Roger determines that she is the daughter of Michael Hunsaker and his wife Claire. They question a hooker named Dixie who claims to have witnessed the incident, but they don't ask her too much because she seems like she's a little worked up, and basically it was kind of like she went out on a limb and actually gave information to the cops, and she could have just not said anything, so she kind of feels like they shouldn't be bothering her like they are. Roger gets a little emotional with the man who is assisting him and providing him information about the crime scene. He tells the man to do whatever legwork he has to do to get the information he needs. Then he calls Trish to ask her for Michael's phone number and reveals to her that Michael's daughter dove out of a window. It cuts to Riggs at this Christmas tree lot examining some cocaine with 3 men who are attempting to sell it to him. So naturally it's some sort of sting operation that Riggs is involved in because we know he's a cop. We just do. This whole thing taking place at a Christmas tree lot is really critical to me justifying covering this movie instead of covering a real Christmas movie. Generally, I've been trying to cover real Christmas movies, but I like to watch movies for this podcast that I've already seen at least once before because it makes it so much easier to take notes and stuff. And basically, I've kind of run out of non-comedy or not full-on comedy Christmas movies that I can cover that I haven't already covered. So it is what it is. After Riggs tells them he wants to buy all of what they have, they tell him it will cost $100, and they add that they'll throw in the best tree they've got for free because Riggs asks about it. And Riggs unseriously begins counting out $100 in cash until they cut him off and stop him and tell him that they mean $100,000 when they said 100. Riggs clarifies that he thinks that, well, he doesn't have enough money, he says, and then he thinks that maybe he could just take everything off their hands for free because he's a cop, and he puts his badge on the table for them to see. They tell him that his badge is fake, and they suggest that he's crazy. And there's like this whole big thing Riggs has with being accused of being crazy and wanting to like show people how crazy he is, which is fair because honestly, I don't know anyone on earth who would go into a $100,000 drug deal and then pretend to be a cop if they really weren't. So in their minds, he would have to be crazy. Riggs assures them that it's a real badge and that he's a real cop and that they can get fucked if they believe otherwise. And all hell breaks loose as the dealers try and get away. Eventually, in the pandemonium, Riggs is held at gunpoint by one of the bad guys and uses him as leverage to try and get out of the situation. But by the way, this is probably never a good call. It never seems to work out for anybody who does it that doesn't just want to die. But Riggs starts telling all the other officers to just shoot the guy anyway, and then Riggs starts to tell the bad guy holding him to shoot him. He starts angrily demanding that the bad guy just shoot him, and then he flies off the handle and basically calls the bad guy's bluff as he breaks out of the hold the guy has on him and he headbutts him. But even once Riggs gets the upper hand with the bad guy, it's like he doesn't want to let the guy go and still wants to fuck him up. but one of the officers finally breaks it up and tells Riggs that it's not worth it. And it's pretty clear that Riggs has some issues, and they desperately want to establish early on that he is a bit of a loose cannon at the very least. So it cuts to him at home again, drinking and watching TV, and his eyes are welling up as he looks at his wedding photos. It's pretty clear he was once married, but his wife is seemingly not with him, and at this point, it's not clear what happened to her. What is clear is that Riggs is super sad about it all of the time, and it probably is what's feeding into his psychotic behavior. Riggs empties this pistol, like his police issued pistol, while he's sitting on the couch and pulls out a single bullet and then loads it in the chamber before turning the gun and pointing it at his forehead. And then, as he is clearly getting emotional, he moves the gun to his mouth and gets very upset before finally giving in and just stopping himself. He says, "I miss you, Victoria Lynn," and even though it's not cut and dry that this is true yet, it seems pretty obvious that his wife actually passed away. She didn't just leave him or something. It cuts to police headquarters where this Captain Murphy is talking to a police psychologist, and the psychologist doesn't actually have a name based on the credits of this movie, but based on her appearances in later movies, I can tell you her name is Dr. Stephanie Woods. Captain Murphy is suggesting that Riggs's assertions about his mental health is something he suspects is a fraudulent attempt to get money somehow. Apparently, there is something referred to as a psycho pension that officers with exceptional mental health issues can be eligible for. But Dr. Woods reminds him that Riggs's wife of 11 years was very recently killed in a car accident, so there's that little bit of exposition for you to fill in those blanks. You weren't entirely sure, even though you were pretty sure, and now you know. The captain asserts that Riggs is tough and doesn't need help, but Dr. Woods says that it is dangerous to keep Riggs in the field because he could be psychotic. And that's just a nice glimpse into the way mental health was viewed and portrayed in the past, because psychotic is not a word that you hear much anymore as a clinical term, and I don't know how much it ever actually had clinical definition for people, but basically, I don't think you hear it. I think that there is still what is considered antipsychotic medication. I just don't hear the word very much. So the real takeaway from the doctor's assessment is that Riggs is a danger to himself and others, and that's why she doesn't think that it's safe to keep him in the field. Captain Murphy very callously asserts that because the doctor cannot be absolutely certain of her diagnosis, he will just wait and see if Riggs kills himself, and then he'll admit that he was wrong about the whole thing if that time actually comes. It cuts to some guy talking to Roger in his office who is explaining that Roger is behind the times and that men of the 80s are more sensitive, because the guy claims he cried in bed last night because he was alone, and then he walks away like it's nothing, and I feel like that was kind of like a throwaway moment in this movie, but it is what it is. A man named Boyette stops to share some information about the Hunsaker case with Roger. And wait a minute, Boyette is played by actor Grand L. Bush, wild name by the way, who also eventually played one of the two Agent Johnsons from the FBI in the 1988 film Die Hard, which was previously covered on this podcast in my first season during the Christmas era, whatever I want to call that. The month of December is when I covered it. He played the Black Agent Johnson, by the way. I could have been really dodgy about saying that and just said he was the one with the mustache, but let's get real. It is what it is. So Roger gets kind of distracted as Boyette is talking, but Boyette mentions something about the drugs in Amanda Hunsaker's system, and Roger kind of mocks him because they found pills all over her apartment after she died, so it kind of seems like an obvious thought that she would have had something like that in her system, and it's not really even worth mentioning. He refers to the medication as barbiturates, which are a class of central nervous system depressants that can cause sedation, relieve anxiety, and treat seizures, but they have a high potential for misuse and overdose. Their effects range from mild to profound, including impaired judgment, coordination, and memory issues, while overdose can lead to fatal respiratory depression. That was all from the AI results on Google. So it probably seemed natural that even though she'd been if she'd been prescribed these, their known side effects would have easily explained the reason for Amanda's suicide. But Boyette clarifies that the capsules had been laced with a lot of drain cleaner, so she would have died pretty quickly if she hadn't taken her own life first the way she did. Roger is looking out across the office and is clearly watching Riggs, who is just sitting across the way, and he's watching him carefully because he is in plain clothes and Roger clearly doesn't know who he is. Boyette reveals two key pieces of information. First, he says, based on forensic evidence from Amanda's bed, they know that there was someone with her the night she died. The other key piece of information that Boyette reveals is that Roger will be breaking in a new partner on the case. Then suddenly, as Riggs is casually pulling out his pistol, Roger is still watching him, not realizing that he's a cop, and he yells out, "Gun!" Riggs looks around in confusion for a moment, and Roger runs up to attempt to disarm him, and Riggs just throws him to the ground and points the gun at him. Boyette walks over and reveals to Roger that the man he thought was a criminal brandishing a firearm in the middle of a police station is his new partner, Martin Riggs. Roger, of course, says the classic line, "I'm too old for this shit," as he lays on the ground, realizing what has really happened. Roger walks with Riggs outside in the parking garage and kind of discusses what he knows about Riggs. He knows about the whole drug bust that recently happened at the Christmas tree lot and compliments Riggs's heroism. He makes some dick comment to Riggs about the war being over, and he mentions that Riggs carries a very dangerous firearm with him, and Riggs offers it to him to have a look at it. When Roger mentions that he still has a 6-shooter instead of a more modern style pistol, Riggs makes the comment that a lot of older guys still carry that kind of gun. Roger also mentions that he heard Riggs is into a bunch of martial arts type things, and he says the line to Riggs, "I guess we should..." I don't want to fuck this up. "I guess we're going to have to register you as a lethal weapon." And of course, as he said it, I announced out loud, "Hey, that's the name of the movie." But Riggs legitimately just says, "Hey, let's cut the shit. We both know why I was transferred. It's because they think I'm suicidal, or they think I'm faking it just to draw a psycho pension. But either way, I'm fucked and nobody wants to work with me." Roger straight up tells him that he doesn't want to work with him either, but he has no choice in the matter. As they both get in the car, Roger says that God hates him and that's what the problem is. Then Riggs just says, "Hate him back, that works for me." And oh shit, we get the scene where we meet Joshua, who is played by the one and only Gary Busey. This guy, Mr. Mendez, is being brought into some kind of club, and Joshua makes sure that he gets checked out at the door. A guy known simply as the General, who is played by Mitchell Ryan, is inside watching musical acts rehearse for the club. Joshua brings Mr. Mendez over to the General, and Mr. Mendez makes it clear that he doesn't like Joshua and thinks he's a psycho, but the General isn't a big fan of Mr. Mendez either. Mendez accuses him of using mercenaries, and the General doesn't deny this, and he says that his people are loyal to him. In order to prove it, the General borrows Mendez's lighter and has Joshua hold out his arm, and then the General holds the lit lighter underneath Joshua's forearm, and Joshua doesn't flinch or really even react to it. And it's so strange because when I was young, I thought that this was an indication of what a great actor Gary Busey must be, that he was able to pull off seeming like such a lunatic in this. Little did I know how much more legitimately insane the real life Gary Busey actually was, and he has only gotten more ridiculous with time. So the General tells Mr. Mendez what he has to do to carry out the deal to buy some of the General's heroin, and how we'll have to deal with Mr. Joshua if he tries any tricks. And it's important to know that Mr. Mendez has absolutely nothing else to do with this movie's plot and was just used as a device to introduce our villains and what they're all about, basically, just how they operate. It cuts to Roger telling Mike Hunsaker about how Amanda was actually poisoned and that she would still be dead even if she if she hadn't jumped out of that window. And they keep saying that, even though that's not really what happened, and they should realistically have no reason to believe that she didn't jump off of that balcony instead of through a window, but whatever. Mike explains to Roger that he originally reached out to him to try and get Amanda out of the stuff that she was getting into because he had heard that Roger was now working in the area as a police officer. He explains that she had not only gotten involved with the wrong people and had started doing drugs, but she was also starting to get into porn. Mike tells Roger that Roger owes him, and Roger says that he does remember that he owes him. Mike makes it clear that he really wants Roger to just kill the people who caused the death of his daughter, as he is very emotional about it, obviously. But Roger, of course, makes it clear that he is a police officer and he can't just straight up kill people. Riggs is inside the office with Roger, but he wasn't involved in the conversation with Mike, but he could clearly overhear everything as he was talking to Mike. Roger and Riggs head outside, and Roger explains that he owes Mike because Mike took a bayonet in the lung for Roger while they were in the war together, and I'm sure they're still commonly used in modern warfare, but every time I hear bayonet, I just picture like Civil War or Revolutionary War era weapons. As the two of them get in the car, a call comes over the police radio, and they take it and head in the direction of the situation in progress. They pull up to a chaotic situation where the police are taping off the area in front of a building, and a man is standing on a ledge several stories up near the top of the building. An officer at the scene explains to them that they don't know how serious the guy is, but obviously he could be serious, so they're taking all of the normal precautions. Riggs volunteers to go up to talk to the guy and claims that he is qualified to talk to a jumper, so he heads upstairs. No one really questions him about his qualification at all. When he gets there, Riggs kind of addresses the officer that's like standing guard, and he walks over and begins talking to the guy who is very much on edge. Ha ha ha, get it? On edge. Anyway, and I guess we'll say overexcited or something. I think the word is frantic that I'm looking for, but he's just really worked up, I guess. Riggs tries to ask him why he's doing this, and the guy tells him it's none of his business, and Riggs says that that's fair enough and that he's just going to come out onto the ledge with the guy. Of course, the guy doesn't like this idea either, and really freaks the fuck out about Riggs climbing over. So I want to make sure I'm adequately painting a picture of what's going on here, because this guy is not just standing on the roof of this building. He is standing on a ledge that is near the roof, and it seems pretty clear that he had to get here by way of the roof. But I just want to make sure everybody knew that he wasn't just standing on a standard building roof with a small wall between him and a quick jump off. He is legitimately standing on a ledge and could fall even accidentally if he wasn't really careful. Roger watches from below, but obviously he has no fucking idea what's going on or what they're saying. He can only see what they're doing. Riggs tries to tell the guy that he's not the first person to think of doing this, especially not during the silly season. But of course, I was able to use context clues to ascertain that that means the Christmas season, because as I mentioned, this is essentially a Christmas movie in almost every way for my purposes. Riggs keeps trying to get closer to the guy, but the guy is freaking out more by the second every time Riggs tries to do anything and tells him to get away. The guy clarifies that he's not a murderer, and the only person he's trying to hurt is himself, and Riggs agrees with him. Riggs tells him that his boss is down there, and he's got to at least make it look like he's trying to save this guy. Riggs fires up a cigarette and offers one to the guy, but as Riggs goes to light his own, light the guy's cigarette for him, he just throws a handcuff on the guy's wrist, and the other handcuff is attached to his own wrist. And honestly, I don't really know how Riggs was able to accomplish this without the guy ever noticing, but it is what it is. It's a movie. Riggs tells him that now he can jump, but he'll have to take Riggs with him, and that will make him a murderer. As he tries to convince the guy to just climb back onto the roof with him, the guy says that he wants to jump, and Riggs really gets in his face and asks him if he actually wants to jump. Then Riggs basically just makes the decision for them, and the two of them have to jump off together and onto a giant air bladder thing on the ground that the police obviously had been setting up. The two of them land safely, and Riggs is simply delighted and laughing at the experience and suggests that they should go do it again. But Roger walks up and he is not amused, and he is legitimately pissed the fuck off at Riggs for handling the situation that way. Roger insists on having Riggs come with him over into a private area, and he asks Riggs if he really wants to kill himself. Riggs explains honestly that sometimes he does think about, as he puts it, eating a bullet. He even shows Roger the hollow point bullet that he keeps on him just so he knows it'll do the job if he decides to go through with it. And then Roger decides very recklessly that he wants to try and call Riggs's bluff. So he goes to give Riggs his revolver, and Riggs holds it to the side of his head, and Roger intensely tells him to put it under his chin so it'll really do the job right. And then Riggs begins pulling the trigger slowly, and you can see the cylinder moving as he does it. And it's in this moment that Roger realizes Riggs really is crazy, and he's not just trying to draw a psycho pension fraudulently. And Riggs just says that he's hungry and wants to go get food, and he just storms off, leaving Roger reeling for what just happened. It cuts to Roger standing near the freeway using a bag phone to call Dr. Adams to confirm that he should really worry about Riggs and his well-being and that he's not faking it. And for those of you that don't know what a bag phone is, it was a very early version of the cell phone. It had what looked like a much more high-tech landline phone with a bunch of buttons on the back instead of underneath it, like on a normal landline phone, and it had a spiral cord attached to it like a landline phone. The actual telecommunication components of the cell phone were in the bag itself, I believe. That it basically looked like a modern laptop bag, but had it was like maybe a little smaller than that. But their designs varied between models and eras. Most of them had like a spot to like hang up the phone and stuff. My mom had one in the early 90s, but I barely remember it, and she didn't have it for very long, I don't think. Roger gets off the phone call with the doctor, and he is very on edge as he drives around with Riggs. Basically, the doctor just explained to him that, like, no, you should be worried about what Riggs is, doing and his well-being and all that stuff. So Riggs kind of gets to joking with Roger a little bit and seems to get him to loosen up a little, and Roger reveals that they're headed to Beverly Hills because they got an address on Amanda's meal ticket, but the person they are actually going to see is not technically a suspect yet. Sorry, to be clear, by meal ticket in this context, he means that this was a person she was potentially seeing, maybe romantically, and was her regular source of income, basically. Roger still dickishly explains to Riggs that Roger will be doing all the talking and that they are not there to rough this guy up. As they open up as they pull up to the mansion, the gate opens for them and a woman tells them to go inside and make themselves at home and even wishes them a Merry Christmas, which I think is very nice. So naturally, it seems like this is going to be a pretty uneventful visit to this mansion, and there's probably nothing to worry about at all. And as the two of them get out of the car, they have their guard up as they walk toward the house. They're kind of talking about what a really nice place it is. Suddenly, they see a couple of women inside handling powdered drugs, and when the two of them notice Riggs and Roger, they quickly rush off and run away, basically. Then, out of nowhere, shots start getting fired at the two officers unexpectedly, and one of their return shots hits the gunman in the leg on the other side of a swimming pool and incapacitates him. And it's just this one gunman. Roger tells Riggs to go find the girls as he goes to confront the gunman. After Riggs handcuffs the girls to a tree, he walks up to the gunman and Roger lectures him about how he only just shot the guy in the leg and he didn't have to, he knew he didn't have to kill him and that's what he did. He just shot him in the leg. But as Riggs goes to read the guy his rights and put cuffs on him, the guy pulls another gun out and Riggs has to shoot him dead after a struggle anyway. This dude, after being shot, falls into the pool that has a plastic cover on it like I've never seen in my life before. So if you've ever had a pool or have known anyone who has a pool, you might know that there are different types of covers to put on a pool for certain reasons. If you live in a wintry area, there's a much larger cover that you're supposed to put over the pool for the extreme cold. And in my experience, these covers are usually solid in color and are not transparent or even translucent. But there are also solar covers to be used during the summer months that are supposed to aid in heating the pool. So, like, it uses sunlight to heat the pool water up. These ones are also darker in color to draw the sunlight and have a bubble wrap style texture to them. And those might only be used in the colder areas as well because the temperature fluctuates so much throughout the year and you have to do so much to heat up the water. But the cover that this guy falls into in this pool is completely clear with the exception of these thick yellow outlines in the multiple sections of the cover. And I guess my confusion with it is not only that I've never seen one like it, but I'm not really sure what the purpose of this cover is. I'm kind of wondering if it prevents things like leaves and maybe dirt from being able to get into the pool as easily and make it like things that would make it dirty when it's not being used. But the strange things about these covers is that I was always told as a kid that they were really dangerous if you were to fall into the pool while the covers were on them. So it was like the impression I got was that if you fell into them, it was some kind of death trap that would envelop you and make it really difficult to escape. And you wonder if it is like so many things that are, as a child, like that are either urban myths perpetuated by misconception of some incident known about by the public, or if it's a result of parents lying to their children to strike fear into their hearts to keep them away from certain things. But anyway, Riggs and Roger needlessly jump into this pool like they're going to save this guy that Riggs clearly just shot and killed, but I guess they have to confirm the kill or something. Later on, it's dark, and they're still, for some reason, at this crime scene, at this mansion, and Riggs is legitimately just inside watching TV. Roger comes in and apologizes to him for some of the dickish comments he made earlier because Riggs legitimately saved his life when the guy pulled the gun on them. But instead of Riggs honorably accepting the apology and being nice about it, he jokingly tells Roger that he bet that hurt to say. Then, for some reason, Roger takes Riggs home with him, and he is greeted outside by his 3 youngest children. And honestly, I didn't think about it at the beginning, which I won't even get into how weird it was that they like surprised him for his birthday in the bathtub when they could have just like brought him a cake or, like had a cake sitting on the table downstairs and been waiting for him. But anyway, it's like maybe it's because Danny Glover was so much younger than the 50-year-old Roger Murtaugh he was playing at the time. But I can't make any sense of why he has so many young kids that are seemingly under 10 years old if he's 50, and I can't really remember if he explains it later or not. And I'm not trying to be judgy about this at all. I just find it a little peculiar because most people who are at that age are usually only portrayed in movies and TV as having teenagers or older kids in general. So he takes Riggs in to meet his family, and when Rianne comes downstairs, she sees Riggs for the first time and is just enamored with him. Like, she gawks at him unabashedly at the dinner table, and there's this legitimately funny bit that the other kids do where one of them beatboxes and the other kind of raps about how Rianne's in love with Riggs. Roger and Riggs go out and are messing around with the motor on Roger's boat, like trying to fix it or something. Riggs seems to think that Roger's theories on the case that are working are way too straightforward and obvious. Eventually, Rianne comes out to ask Roger if she can go out with a boy, but he says no because she's grounded for smoking weed in the house. As Riggs goes to leave for the night, he asks Roger if he'll ever trust him, and Roger says if he can go the whole next day without killing anybody, including the 2 of them, he'll trust him. Riggs explains that killing is the only thing he's ever been good at, and that when he was 19, he killed a guy in Laos with a rifle shot in high wind from 1,000 yards out. And I don't really have a lot of experience in sniper rifle shooting, and by that I mean I have 0 experience, but from what I've gathered, that would be an incredibly difficult shot. And to be fair, Riggs does say that only 8 to 10 guys in the world could probably have pulled it off. As one last question, Roger asks Riggs if he really likes Trisha's cooking, and Riggs hesitates for a second and just says no. Roger comes back inside and finds a couple of packages for him lying on the counter, and the first is just this gag gift about him turning 50, and it's like toy handcuffs or something. And the second one is evidence for Amanda's case, and it contains a yearbook and a VHS tape with footage from one of her adult movies. Thinking about what happened to her really seems to upset Roger, maybe because Amanda was not too much older than Rianne. Riggs wakes Roger up the next morning with a cup of coffee and asks him about what the name of the hooker was that said she witnessed the death of Amanda. Roger says it was Dixie, and then it cuts to the two of them at the shooting range. They discuss some theories about Dixie and how even though they originally thought it was a man that was with Amanda the night she died, it could have been Dixie. They suggest that maybe she was up there with Amanda and potentially either witnessed her jump or even pushed her off. And it's also likely that she was paid to drug Amanda with the drain cleaner. And then they think she went down after she realized what a big deal it was and found the nearest officer and claimed she witnessed what had happened to make her seem innocent, or at least more innocent than she actually was. They're firing a bunch of shots, and when Roger looks at his target, he brags pretty openly to Riggs about how good his accuracy is for an old man. But when Riggs shows him his target, the shots are more tightly grouped and they're accurate. They're basically just clustered in the head and chest areas. Roger decides he's going to show Riggs what he can do, and he puts up a new target, and these are just paper targets hanging from a clip. And he backs it up about 20 feet away, maybe, and fires a single shot in the center of the paper target's head, and is very braggy about it when he shows Riggs. Then Riggs takes the same target and clips it on and backs it up way farther, like maybe 100 feet back, and fires multiple shots. And then when he brings the target back, you can see he's showing it to Roger, and he makes he made a smiley face with the gunshots on the target's head. He just jokingly says, "Have a nice day," and Roger stands there in disbelief as he sees how incredible Riggs's accuracy is. The two of them ride to a house where a bunch of kids are drawing on the sidewalk across the street, and the kids all immediately recognize that the two of them are cops and ask if they're going to bust Dixie. They dismissively say no, and that they're just going to get a cup of coffee with her. As the two of them walk up onto the lawn of the house where Dixie is supposed to be, the house suddenly explodes and the two of them fall over on the grass. This seemingly makes them realize that what they thought was a pretty flimsy theory might have actually held more water than they originally expected. The two of them go back across the street to make sure the kids who are playing outside are okay, and the kids are just amped about the cool explosion, and they're virtually unharmed from what you can tell. But one of them asks if they think Dixie was inside the house when it blew up, and Roger and Riggs exchange glances, and it cuts to a body being carried out in a bag from the destroyed house. Riggs discusses that the stuff that was used to rig the explosion is incredibly sophisticated, like there's a mercury switch and all this stuff that he says it's very professional stuff that he hasn't seen since the war. A plainclothes officer comes by and tells them that one of the kids who was outside playing said that they had seen someone come by and check the gas meter that day, and the gas company said it wasn't due to be checked for another month. They recognize that these kids are pretty young and they might not be the most reliable eyewitnesses, but they decide to ask the kids some questions. Even though it was only one of the kids who witnessed anything, all four kids are sitting there as Roger tries to question him, and of course they tell the witness kid not to tell them anything or he'll get locked up and he won't be able to see his mom and all this stuff. Eventually, Roger is able to determine that the witness is named Alfred and he is 6 years old. But because the other kids are being so disruptive, Roger suggests getting them some ice cream so he can talk to Alfred alone. Alfred is wearing a pretty cool pair of cardboard 3D glasses that he has, like he put a strap on them so that they'll stay on his face. Roger asks Alfred to picture the man he saw, and they're able to determine that it was a white man with blonde hair who was tall. But the key piece of information that they get is that the man had a tattoo that matches the one on Riggs's arm. Riggs pulls Roger aside, and explains to him that it is a special forces tattoo. Like it's kind of like, it looks like a heart that has like a dagger going through it. Roger grows very concerned about the nature of this criminal organization that they're dealing with, given the lengths that they are willing to go to and the caliber of people that they are basically hiring to do stuff. It cuts to after Amanda's funeral, and Roger is questioning her father, Mike. He believes that the real reason Amanda was killed was not something she was involved in, but rather something Mike was involved in, and that they intended to get at him through her. And he also assumes that the real reason Mike had tried to contact him beforehand was to blow the whistle on what was happening and basically all of this crazy stuff that's going on. But Roger is much more tense with Mike than he was previously, and when Mike just goes to grab something from his inside jacket pocket, Roger stops him and tells him not to do that because obviously he doesn't know what Mike might be doing, even though it does seem like Mike wouldn't have reached out to him if he was just going to kill him. Mike explains that he's concerned because he has another daughter that he doesn't want to lose. And then he goes on to say that Roger doesn't know the type of people that they're talking about. And so he fills him in on the fact that it goes back as far as the war and basically just dumps all of this exposition about this criminal organization and how they started. So he says that he was working with a front for the CIA, which is a group called Air America that was running out of Laos before they were mercenaries. And I'm sorry, to clarify, these guys were mercenaries. Basically, something happened with a group Mike was in called Shadow Company, with the enemy bringing in drugs, and they ended up doing a lot to cover their tracks, and they killed a bunch of people to cover it up. But Mike says that they formed a plan, and years later, Shadow Company reconvened in the US, presumably. They basically used a list that they had of drug sources that was still like what they had from the war, and it was all of these sources that were in Asia, and they wanted to basically have them start bringing drugs into America, bringing heroin in specifically. Mike explains that they killed Amanda instead of him because they need him to use the bank he works for as a front to launder the money for their drug operations. Suddenly, Roger tells Mike that he intends to bring down the whole organization, but Mike tells him it's too big and too dangerous. Suddenly, as they look out the window of the room that they're in, a helicopter appears from out of view with Joshua aiming a gun in their direction, and Riggs is still outside. Joshua was the bad guy that had the lighter under his arm and didn't flinch. Joshua fires a couple of shots and kills Mike, but Roger is able to take cover before he gets shot. Riggs then attempts to shoot down the helicopter with his pistol as it's already flying away, and he's unsuccessful. I don't think he held out much hope there. As Joshua flees, he explains over the radio to the general that he killed Mike, but there is another problem because Mike was with the police and they likely know what he knows now. The general is annoyed that Joshua was unable to kill the police at the same time and suggests upping the ante. A little aside here, I don't have this in my notes, but basically, like, why didn't they just kill Mike to begin with? Like, I guess he explains that they needed him for his laundering, but it's like, if they were just going to ultimately have to kill him anyway, I don't understand why they would be willing to do that now, and they haven't been, like, trying to kidnap him or something, like, why would they kill him? So it cuts to Riggs questioning a prostitute about Dixie on the street, and suddenly Joshua comes by in a red car, and Riggs hides the prostitute behind him as Joshua fires a shot. This causes Riggs to fly through the window nearby, and the glass shatters. Roger comes up to check on Riggs from nearby because he was kind of like watching him talking to the prostitutes. And he notices that Riggs was wearing a bulletproof vest, so he's basically unhurt. Riggs declares to Roger that he is pissed off now and that he recognized the guy as the same guy who killed Mike, but they know it will work to their advantage that the bad guys might actually think that Riggs is dead now. Suddenly, a call comes from over the radio asking specifically for Riggs and Roger to follow up on something because it's close to Roger's house. When Roger jokingly suggests that someone involved might have looked like the boy Rihanna is going out with, the dispatcher says that he is right, and Roger panics because he knows that means the bad guys might be heading for his house. The two of them rush back to Roger's house and find a note indicating that the bad guys kidnapped Rianne. A call comes through at their house, and it's Joshua, and he tells Roger he has his daughter and to stay near the phone for when they call back with details on a meeting location. It cuts to police headquarters where Joshua calls and poses as a reporter for a newspaper asking about the officer involved in a shooting that had occurred recently. And the police official deliberately tells him that Martin Riggs was shot and killed. And this gives Joshua and the general a false sense of security that they don't really have to worry about Riggs anymore. Riggs is giving Roger a pep talk about how they'll have to get down and dirty on this and not be afraid to kill people. Roger asks him if he really is crazy or if he's as good as he says he is, and he explains that Roger will have to trust him. Suddenly, the phone rings and the voice on the other end says that they don't want Roger's daughter. They just want to know what Mike told him, and they tell him where to meet them, which is in the middle of the desert. It shows Roger driving out into the desert and making a quick stop to drop off Riggs, who runs off with a rifle. This is so, like, basically the whole plan is that Riggs will park himself nearby, hidden from view, out of sight, and try and snipe the bad guys from a distance while Roger meets with them because they're not suspecting this. But also, like, Roger has no idea which direction the bad guys might be coming from. And so it's really risky to have Riggs do this because basically, if the bad guys come through the same way that Riggs is hiding, then they could just find him and shoot him. But it is what it is. Roger walks up with his hands in his pockets and they show him Rianne and they tell him like that they will take him with them and then let her go later, but Roger wants them to let her go now, of course. And so it's like there are multiple cars, there are multiple bad guys, and there's a helicopter, and they have Rianne. They tell him to take his hands out of his pockets, and he does, and reveals that one hand has a grenade in it, and he tells them that he will kill all of them. He'll take them all out if that's what he has to do. And honestly, I don't really know that much about grenades, but you would probably have to get all of these guys really fucking close together to be able to definitively kill all of them with one single grenade. But one of them shoots him in the shoulder and he drops the grenade. And when the grenade goes off, it's only a smoke grenade. So Riggs had been waiting for Roger to get out of his way so he could start shooting people. And the grenade was planned to be used as perfect cover. And Joshua immediately knows that Riggs must still be alive. And, you know, it's just like he sees the shots coming and he knows it's this sniper. And he's like, well, this could only be Riggs because he kind of knows what Riggs is, what his past is like. Suddenly, Riggs picks off two of the men who are next to Rianne, and Roger yells at her to get in the limousine. So she does, and then she struggles to drive away. Then as Riggs takes aim at Joshua, who in my opinion would be way too smart to stand there like an idiot when he clearly knows that Riggs is actively firing shots at them. But just as he goes to fire the shot at Joshua, the general holds a gun up to him and makes him stop shooting. When Joshua gets the word that Riggs has been captured, he orders that they go retrieve Rianne. And it's this really weird, awkward scene where, like, she's trying to drive away in the limousine and basically just gets a flat tire, and this helicopter is, like, bearing down on her, and they finally just, like, stop and go grab her. Riggs is being escorted back to the group of people by the general, and he identifies him as being a man named Peter McAllister, and Riggs confidently asserts that he will stop him. It cuts to Riggs with his hands tied above his head with water showering down on him, and an Asian man named Endo with a car battery on a dolly approaching him. Joshua explains to him that since they have Roger, they don't really need Riggs, and that his concern is that Mike might have told him something, and he doesn't want their new shipment to come in and have it be met with like 50 cops waiting for it. And the whole hang up I have with this entire thing is that the bad guys keep acting like they just want to know what Mike told them. But in reality, they could never be certain that they had all of the information they needed, even if there was a lot of it to be had. So it's like, yeah, there's always a possibility that Roger and Riggs got information from Mike and then they shared that with the police. But I don't really see what the police think their end game is with, or, like what they think with the end game is with torturing these guys. It's not like they can ever really let them go. But when Riggs tells him that Joshua killed Mike before he was able to divulge any valuable information, Joshua doesn't believe him anyway. So Joshua explains to him that if Riggs will simply tell him everything he knows, that he will make his death quick, but Riggs holds firm that he has shared all the information he has. Joshua explains to Riggs that Endo does electric shock treatment, and he basically is using the sponges that are like hooked up to jumper cables to shock and torture Riggs repeatedly as the water's running over him. So it's like exceedingly painful. Being shocked repeatedly enrages Riggs, of course, and he declares that he will kill both Joshua and Endo. Then it cuts to Roger tied to a chair and being punched repeatedly in a more classic torture style. But then they begin rubbing white powder into his shoulder, like he has a gunshot wound on his shoulder from when he was holding that grenade, which causes him to cry out in pain. I don't even know. I tried to look up what this powder is, and I gather that it's something that was in medical kits that were given to soldiers. It's just this powder for sterilizing the wound, but I'm not sure if that's what it's supposed to be or not. The general is unsatisfied and does not believe that Roger has divulged any valuable information that he has, so he brings out Rianne to aid in his persuasion. It cuts back to Riggs, and Endo is explaining to Joshua that no one could take as much torture as Riggs has and not give up any information if they had it, which it's like, I mean, yeah, they could. So Joshua leaves Endo to continue with the torturing and presumably eventually just kill Riggs, but Joshua doesn't give a shit about it anymore. So as soon as Joshua leaves, Endo goes to resume torturing Riggs, but Riggs suddenly pulls himself up by his restraints and starts fucking strangling Endo with his legs, and then he kills Endo. It cuts back to Roger tied to the chair, and the general is threatening to do something to Rianne, but Riggs busts into the room with Endo's body on his shoulders for some reason, and he throws the body at one of the bad guys. The general flees, and Riggs takes out a few of his underlings and frees Roger and Rianne, and they make their way out into the main club. Apparently, throughout this whole torture sequence, they were just in a back room area of the club, which is shocking. I would just love it if a patron of the club wandered back there while it was happening, just looking for a bathroom or something. Joshua begins firing at them repeatedly in this club and eventually makes his way out onto the street, and he steals someone's car and flees. I do feel compelled to mention that the movie does not do a very good job establishing where the general went in this moment, like during this sequence. I rewound it and watched it multiple times and could not figure out where the general went between threatening to do something to Rianne and when Riggs broke into the room. You don't really see that at all. I don't know if it got left on the editing room floor and forgotten or what. Roger gives Rianne to a police officer as Riggs follows Joshua on foot, but he knows he's heading for the freeway and is taking some kind of shortcut. Eventually, as Joshua takes an on-ramp, Riggs has taken a shortcut and catches up and fires at him and causes the car to catch fire, and then Joshua bails out before it explodes, and he runs away on foot. He and Riggs exchange shots on a crowded road, but Joshua manages to steal another car and just get away. Then magically, the general is getting into a car in a garage with his driver after grabbing a gun and some grenades, and it almost seems like he just vanished for a conveniently long enough period of time to just reappear again without any explanation. They drive down an alleyway where Roger is standing and waiting, and Roger fires a single shot that takes out the driver, and the vehicle crashes and catches fire. And it's shown that the general survived the crash but was trapped and trying to reach his grenades, but the fire ignites them and kills him in the ensuing explosion. Riggs returns to find Roger, and initially their intent is to go to a hospital for Roger's gunshot wound, but Riggs reveals Joshua got away, and Roger knows he might be going back to his house to potentially harm his family. And it cuts to Joshua killing the officers that are like patrolling outside Roger's house. And it causes their car, because they've got the car in gear, The car runs into a fire hydrant and water begins spraying up in the air. As Joshua makes his way inside, he finds a note on the Christmas tree indicating that Roger and Riggs beat him there. There is a principle in storytelling, especially as it relates to movies, that is called Deus ex machina. The concept of this is not to describe plot holes, but rather like plot conveniences or things that just seem to happen in a story that really work out well, but don't actually make a lot of sense upon further examination. The fact that Joshua got as far away as he did and managed to escape from Riggs in a car when they were on the freeway is just wild. And then Riggs somehow had time to come all the way back to where he ran from initially to meet Roger. That was a pretty fucking hefty distance to go. And we're to believe that somehow they managed to arrive at Roger's home this quickly and get there before Joshua. Like, obviously, they probably could have found a phone and called to warn the Murtaughs that Joshua was coming and tell them to leave the house. But no, it's legitimately established that they are already at the house when Joshua gets there because suddenly a police car crashes through the front window of the house and it seems like Roger is just going to arrest Joshua after he's like taken out by this. But instead, Riggs asks him if he would like a shot at the title, and he and Joshua begin fist fighting in the front lawn, and the water from the damaged hydrant begins raining down on them. A few times it legitimately seems like Joshua might actually win, but of course Riggs ultimately defeats him. But as officers are attempting to put cuffs on Joshua, Joshua struggles and attempts to take the officer's gun, but before he can shoot, Riggs and Roger draw their guns simultaneously and both shoot him dead at the same time. Afterwards, Riggs comes to the door of the Murtaugh house and Rianne answers the door. He pulls out the hollow tip bullet that he has, and it's wrapped in a bow, and he tells her to give it to her dad because he won't be needing it anymore, and says her dad will understand. And as he goes to leave, Roger stops him and offers for him to have dinner with their family, and Riggs confirms that he's not really crazy and that Roger says he knows that. Riggs is relieved and he calls his dog inside to join them as well. And so basically it's like he gave him the bullet that he had been intending to use to kill himself as like a gift of like, hey, thanks for everything you did. And then we roll credits. All right, on to trivia. Jackie Swanson performed the high fall on her own from the beginning of the movie, trained by legendary stuntman Dar Robinson. Also, the stunt was done using an airbag covered with a life-sized painting of the driveway and cars, which, like a foreground miniature, visually blends into the real scene. Thus, the editor is able to hold the shot until just as she makes contact with the airbag to create greater realism. Dar Robinson, the stuntman, was killed in a motorcycle accident shortly after principal photography finished for the movie. Director Richard Donner dedicated the film to him. Mel Gibson turned down starring roles in The Fly from 1986 and The Untouchables from 1987 in order to do this movie. Jeff Goldblum ended up starring in The Fly. Kevin Costner ended up starring in The Untouchables. Casting director Marion Doherty first suggested teaming Mel Gibson with Danny Glover. She arranged for Gibson to fly in from his home in Sydney while Glover was flown in from Chicago, where he was appearing in a play to read through the script. On an True Hollywood Story from 1996, Gary Busey says he was hired to play Joshua because they were looking for someone big and menacing enough to be a believable foe for Mel Gibson. Busey also credits the film for reviving his then failing movie career, which is totally fair. Like, he wasn't in jack shit for a very long time before this movie came along. Mel Gibson and Bruce Willis were considered for each other's roles in Lethal Weapon from 1987 and Die Hard from 1988. Both movies were produced by Joel Silver with music by Michael Kamen. Willis was offered the role of Martin Riggs but turned it down, and a year later he did Die Hard from 1988. Gibson was considered to play John McClane, along with his co-stars from The Expendables 3, Harrison Ford, Sylvester Stallone, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, but they all turned it down. Coincidentally, the script for Die Hard with a Vengeance from 1995 was briefly considered to be filmed as a Lethal Weapon sequel, and I actually never knew that. An alternate opening and ending were both filmed and are available on the Lethal Weapon 4 DVD. The alternate opening featured Martin Riggs drinking alone in a bar where he is accosted by a couple of thugs who want his money. Riggs claims all of his money is in the bank and tells the thugs not to fuck with him. The thugs attack him, but Riggs easily subdues them. He is then allowed to take a free bottle of booze from the bar in exchange for never returning. Richard Donner felt the movie should open with a brighter look at Riggs and film the scene with Riggs awakening in his trailer to replace it. The alternate ending featured Riggs and Murtaugh saying goodbye to one another. Murtaugh tells Riggs that he's thinking about retiring, but Riggs tells him not to. From the early pre-production stages, Richard Donner wanted the final fight sequence to be unique, yet also to make a strong statement about the characters involved. Coincidentally, assistant director Willie Simmons had an avid interest in unusual forms of martial arts, and he invited several practitioners to the set to demonstrate for Donner. The result was the hiring of 3 technical advisors, each a master of a particular martial arts style. Cedric Adams was the first expert brought in. Donner said Adams thought the best possible way to show just how lethal Riggs really is to show his mastery of a form of martial arts never before seen on screen. Adams taught the actors the movements of capoeira, I guess is how that's Capoeira. Okay. Second technical advisor, Dennis Newsom, brought Jailhouse Rock to the fight sequence. Okay. The third technical advisor was Rorian Gracie, who specialized in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The filming was spread over 4 complete nights, shooting from dusk till dawn, resulting in an edited sequence that would last several minutes on screen. In the scene where Riggs is contemplating suicide, there is an actual bullet blank in the chamber, which Mel Gibson was pointing at his head, thinking that it would allow for a greater sense of portraying the scene realistically and dramatically. While bullet blanks don't actually fire live rounds, the ejection of air and debris from the gun barrel can and have fatally injured people at very close range. The 2 leads were signed by early spring of 1986. Mel Gibson and Danny Glover then flew home to pack and returned to Los Angeles so they could begin an intensive 2 months of physical training and preparation. The rifle Riggs uses in the desert is a $10,000 Heckler & Koch PSG-1 marksman's rifle made in then West Germany. At the time, it was one of only 2 specimens in civilian hands in the United States. Producers wanted cutting-edge firearms in the movie, and the PSG-1 was borrowed from Bumblebee Wholesale, a famous gun store in Los Angeles. The rifle normally comes with its own unique tripod rest, but it was not yet shipped with the gun, so prop masters welded the Harris bipod on. The production had to pay for the full value of the rifle. They don't say if it's because they had to weld on a stand. I assume so. I guess that's what we're ascertaining. Danny Glover's character, Sergeant Roger Murtaugh, is 50 years old in the movie, but Glover was only 40 years old in 1986 when this film was being shot. I don't do this very often. I'm going to try and start doing it more because I actually tried sorting IMDb trivia. So for IMDb nuggets, for those who are not familiar, because I haven't done one in a long time, these are weird trivia items from IMDb that are frequently labeled as not being helpful or not being interesting or whatever. And they're basically just these random fucking items that probably aren't even based in fact. Usually they're like based in opinion, but this is the one I found for this. During the Mexican standoff scene, which I don't know that it's considered a Mexican standoff, it's just a standoff, where Riggs was covering Roger with a sniper rifle. Given the wind speed and dust in the air and the movement of the henchmen, it would be impossible for Riggs to make such clean, accurate shots at those speeds. Okay, like, do you know exactly what the wind speed was? You don't even know, based on the movie, what Riggs's distance was. If Riggs was only like 100 yards out, I imagine that's probably not that daring. But as I said, I'm not an expert, okay? So on to info and ratings. Opening weekend, 6.8 million. Worldwide gross, 120.2 million. IMDb rating, 7.6. Letterboxd rating, 3.7. Rotten Tomato critic score, 81%. Rotten Tomato audience score, 86%. Personal rating, 5 out of 5 stars. Praise for this movie. Honestly, this one is an all-time great buddy cop movie, and I still love it to this day. Glover and Gibson really have a great chemistry and dynamic with each other, and I do enjoy the light humor of the movie. It's not like annoying or stupid or overdone. For criticism, honestly, I didn't want to mention it too much during the actual discussion of the movie, but the weird saxophone score makes this movie feel so much more dated and is honestly very jarring every single time I've watched it, especially the very first time. All right, everyone. Thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day. Bye now.
I'm here to welcome you to Brandon and Random Reviews. No method when I choose. It's Brandon and Random Reviews. What you hoped you would see. He's half blind with hats tied, with all the dates of